Thank you so much. I just want to start off by saying, if you see me fiddling with my phone, I'm not tweeting. It's because I'm recording this on my phone. Okay, I might be tweeting a little bit if something really big comes up. So I got involved with doing Actors to Watch about 3 years ago. This is my second time in the Hamptons. It's so wonderful to come out here. I get the best sleep out here. I don't know what it is. And I'm really thrilled about this year's list. It's such a great group of people, and so honored that 4 of them would come and join us. I just want to introduce them real quick. Starting at the end, we have a very, very busy actress. I think we all fell in love with her in Moonrise Kingdom. She actually is a real overachiever. She has 2 highly acclaimed films here at the festival, Manchester by the Sea and Patterson. This is Kara Hayward, and we made these for you guys.
Oh, gosh.
Thank you.
Oh, wow.
This is an actor. You talk about actors to watch. We've been watching him for some time, but not in a creepy way. Maybe a little creepy, but we were all huge fans of his work in Nightcrawler. And then he did us a big favor by, we put him on this list, and then he showed up in this amazing performance in HBO's The Night Of, which made us look really smart. He can be seen here at the festival in Uno, which I'm actually going to see today. I think it's like at 4:30. And later this year, he'll appear in a little indie called Star Wars Rogue One. Please welcome Riz Ahmed. Also joining us, we have an actor who my friends are so sick of hearing me talk about, because I was privileged enough to see Moonlight like a couple months ago, and I have been practicing saying the name Mahershala Ali all summer long. I'm so and then he also did us a big favor by, right after we decided for him on this list, got an Emmy nomination for House of Cards. Couldn't go to the Emmy Awards ceremony because you were in Toronto promoting Moonlight. Yes. Which is such, I don't know if I think it screens here tonight.
Yes.
You must see this movie. I have never seen a reaction to the movie the way people just come out and they want to hug each other. Strangers want to embrace. Couples have probably formed. Also a huge overachiever. You can see him right now on Netflix's Luke Cage. And he has 2 other films coming out this year, Kicks, which is a really sweet indie, and Hidden Figures with Taraji P. Henson. Please welcome Mahershala Ali.
Thank you.
And then finally, please join me in welcoming an actress who's currently burning up the small screen on How to Get Away with Murder. And as of this weekend, you can see one of the best movies of the year, the Sundance sensation, Birth of a Nation. It is such a fantastic film. Please welcome Asia Naomi King. Thank you guys so much for being here. I just always like to start out by asking actors, when did you first develop an interest in performing, and who were the artists that inspired you then and continue to inspire you now?
Okay, well, my mother said that from a young age I've always been performing at restaurants, in the grocery store, so much so that she'd have to tell me that I wasn't on stage. But I didn't actually really get into it until after high school. But I always loved watching old movies, like, AMC and TCM were my favorite channels growing up, seeing like Doris Day and Audrey Hepburn. And it was like, oh, it's like so magical and amazing, and this seems like such a cool thing to be able to do. And now I do it.
Not only do you do it, you get to work with Viola Davis on a weekly basis.
Now that is magical and amazing.
I mean, I know you're a professional and everything, but do you ever have days where you're like, oh my God, that's Viola Davis?
Definitely in the beginning, but as we've gone on and I've gotten to know her and see just how funny she is, like every single day, I'm always like, you're an Academy Award nominee. You can't say that. Like, she's really hilarious, and now she just feels like family, which is really nice.
I think I just found my way into acting as a bit of a therapeutic accident. My father I was 20 when my dad passed, and he was a New Yorker. He was in, he did Broadway. He was in Dreamgirls. And so I grew up as an athlete. I went to college on a basketball scholarship. And so there was a separation, there's the divide between myself and this huge figure in my life, which was my dad. And in some ways, young boys really want to be some version of their fathers, right? And so my dad was sick, and he had great taste. I was growing up right near Oakland in Hayward, California, which is very much a working class, kind of blue collar town. But I would come out to New York and sort of get cultured a little bit. And we would be in his room watching these wonderful laser discs, these big record player looking, and sometimes we were able to go out to a movie, but he would take me to go. I saw Sex, Lies, and Videotape when I was like 16 or something. And then One False Move and The Player, Shortcuts. So I was this kid getting kind of introduced into wonderful independent film. And then my dad passed when I was 20, and I was in school, and I kind of just took this acting class as more of a response to not wanting to take the second semester of Spanish. and so I just chose it as an elective. And along with that, and having some really wonderful professors and like a documentary film class that I was taking, but we ended up having to watch Raging Bull and The Deer Hunter. And so I think marrying that with the films that my father exposed me to, I somehow was able to recognize what was great work and what felt sort of aspirational to me. And then later on, I just kind of found myself doing it more, and people telling me that was the way to go. And I think you have to listen for your life signs. And I think I got enough of those to point me in that direction. I didn't know what I was doing. Ignorance is bliss. And so I just found myself in school at some point for it.
So your dad never knew that you wanted to be an actor?
He never saw me act. He passed before I acted. Yeah, before I did. So I was speaking at this diversity conference at my school in my freshman year, my sophomore year. And there was an acting teacher who was directing this play, House of Blue Leaves. And she said, "Hey, you're a big guy. You look fairly intimidating. Would you like to come and be in this play?" I didn't take it seriously. I was there again to play basketball. I don't even think I read the play. I memorized my little part. I showed up. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how serious to take it. I just knew I needed to be there at such and such a time, run around on stage. It was a blast. I called my dad, and again, it was that little hair of connection. And I told him, "Hey, I did this play." And at that time, the reason I said sort of a therapeutic accident was I had insomnia, kind of connected to him, and just processing some stuff. And so I'd be up all night writing. And really, there were days on end when I just didn't go to sleep, so I'd be up writing, and I started performing those pieces. So this is the early 90s. And so he would have me, his friends would come over to visit. So he would say, "Yeah, do that one piece, do Cool Birth or whatever." And then I would do these poems, and I didn't really know, but that was sort of like slam poetry and sort of acting. And so I actually auditioned for NYU with some of my poetry at that time. Yeah, when I got into grad school. So that was just how I slipped into it. So it was real organic. I had a hard time. It took me a really long time. I probably was in my third year of grad school before I kind of could say I was an actor. It really took me a while.
Do you remember any of those poems?
Fortunately, no. for all of our sake. Yeah. So.
Wow, that's such a beautiful, moving story. It's acting.
And now you have to follow that.
Yeah. Mine's just as noble in a way. So I went to a boys' school, and acting meant we get to do plays with the girls' school. So yeah, just on a level with your kind of. No, I mean, I guess I was always getting into trouble at school, and a couple of teachers said, if you're going to mess around, do it on the stage, you get a round of applause for it. Do it in a class and I'll throw you out. And it just really went from there. I just loved it. I just loved the kind of camaraderie and that kind of whole thing. But I guess if I really look back, I I guess I kind of grew up between lots of different classes, like different classes and cultures, like where I grew up, where I went to school, and you know, the outside world and home felt like very different places. So in a way, I guess I was always kind of code switching quite a lot. And from a very young age, that kind of teaches you to be a chameleon as just a form of survival, really. So it always kind of came as second nature, the idea of kind of meeting a new group of people and having to kind of change the way you talk, your costume, everything. And so I guess it was always kind of came as second nature without really realizing it. But doing it on a stage and stuff, it was really a way of not getting thrown out of school. Yeah.
And you also have a second career as a musician. You're a very accomplished musician. Which came first, the acting or the music?
I guess I've always been doing them side by side, really, since I was at school. I don't play any musical instruments,
Well, I should
but I
say
like
DJ.
being elevated
Yeah.
into that.
Yeah.
I'm just really following in Mahershala's footsteps as an MC. So I wrote the lyrics to Cool Birth, just so you know. I ghost wrote his early pieces.
So is MC, because I
Yeah,
consider
I'm a
that
rapper.
musician.
I'm a rapper, yeah, an MC. In the UK, we call it an MC because it
Yeah.
comes from a slightly different tradition, which is more rave music, drum and bass, jungle, and garage. But it's kind of dovetailed into rap music as well now.
So musician isn't the right term, or
You can
I
call
mean,
me a
I
musician.
think-
Sounds
yeah.
cool, yeah. Let's
Okay.
do that.
Well, I really fell into acting head first. Moonrise Kingdom was my first experience with acting.
Ever?
Ever. I'd gone to the audition on a whim. I'd heard about, this was taking place somewhere in Boston. I was like, well, what am I doing sitting here? I should go check that out, see what they do. And then I went there and I thought, God, people do this for a living. They're actors, and that's something that they do with their entire lives. Like, why would I? Of course I'm going to want to do this. I had such a great experience on set and such a good time. I thought, if I can keep doing this, like, why would I ever stop?
So your first acting role, your first audition was for the lead in a Wes Anderson movie, and you got it. So it's just that easy, is what you're saying.
Well, God, I don't know. I just got really lucky. They just happened to like me. I don't know.
But then, after that, you've continued to work with these amazing filmmakers. I mean, Jim Jarmusch and Kenneth Lonergan.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you have something to show for that. How did, you go from, what might have been a big break, but turn it into, like, a lasting career?
Well, I don't even know how to begin to answer that question. I suppose I just have been lucky enough to get some really quality roles with some really quality directors, and hopefully if I can keep doing that, it'll become something for life. This is the best answer I can give you. I don't know.
And for the rest of you, I know the term big break is a misnomer because it tends to be a series of little breaks or, medium-sized breaks. But is there a role or a project that you sort of consider, put you on the map as an actor?
Speaking for myself, I guess it would definitely be House of Cards, which is interesting because that's like 12 years into a career where I'd been working. I worked with Mariska way back there.
Oh, really?
A few years ago. Unfortunately, I played a rapist. But thank you. Literally, quick story. I was living in Brooklyn. I just moved about 5 months ago. And I kid you not, I walk into the bodega. It's like 11 at night. It's packed. People are buying their sandwiches and whatnot because people are coming back or maybe going to a club or something. And I walk in, and then I hear someone be like, "Yo, B, that's right. Yeah, man. I saw him on TV. He raped a girl. Yo, yeah, that's him." And then they talking, and I was like, "Put that in context, bruh. Put that in context." It was SVU. Like, yeah. So, thank you, Mariska. Thank you.
Did she take you down on the show?
Yeah. They were. What's that?
Did she take you down on the show?
I think so. He got what he deserved. Yeah, they usually do, right? Yeah. So,
But I mean, your film debut was in a David Fincher movie.
Yeah, Curious Case of Benjamin Button, and which was amazing working with David. I think that there's an interesting way a really amazing way to come into it. Working with a perfectionist, someone who can kind of do everyone's job better than they can. I think everyone kind of knows that working with David. But he's just really phenomenal. And in terms of really answering your question about breaks, for me, it's kind of been built brick by brick. I just was fortunate enough to eventually get on something that mattered to the right people. Because you can be on a huge show that a lot of people are watching, but perhaps maybe not producers and casting directors and whatnot are watching that. So you're not really going to get that meeting that maybe leads to you really connecting with something that you're passionate about. Where, like, I want to go home tired, if that sounds right, and having had to like work it out. And I've spent a lot of time kind of supporting the narrative or the protagonist, and so you want to get to a place where you have the responsibility to carry that story and just know that you have the capacity to do that and kind of connect to where you've envisioned yourself being for some time. And so I guess House of Cards is, to make a short story really long.
You know, you mentioned being recognized from one episode of SVU. Luke Cage premiered a week ago. You are very terrifying in that. I'm curious now if people see you on the street and cross the street, or...
Well, I used to get, yo, Remy, which can be annoying at a certain point, right? You know, and it also depends on who it's coming from and how confidently they say that. But now I think I would take Remy because now people are like, yo, Cottonmouth. And because that's his name, he's a villain, you know. So, but all positive, you know. Maybe because of you and you all here, maybe eventually someone will say Mahershala.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying is right. Often from the inside, it can feel like you've been plugging away, working on stuff for a long time, apart from you, who just went straight to the top. So thanks a lot. Yeah, I guess it can feel like a very gradual kind of thing, step by step, but from the outside, people suddenly kind of start taking notice. I guess in America, the first time a lot of people would have seen my work would have been Nightcrawler. Which is kind of weird to me, I guess, because in the UK I'd kind of been lucky to do lots of films already that had found quite a dedicated audience. So yeah, I guess that was a kind of bit of a turning point, and it was a strange year for me that year actually, because I was almost working exclusively on music and nothing really was coming my way acting wise that really excited me. And it was at that point I really started writing, you know, write my short films, started writing my TV series, and I was kind of ready to kind of go, well, you know, if the acting doesn't, you know, carry on exciting me, I'll just forget about it. And I remember when I met Dan Gilroy for that role, I was just happened to be in LA for music, and my agent was like, look, just meet this guy. So I met him. I didn't even have a chance to read the script or anything. I sat down with him and he just went, listen, I've seen all your work. You're definitely wrong for this role. There's no point in you auditioning for this, but let's just have a coffee.
Wow.
And so I was like, cool. And because there was no pressure on it, by the end of the conversation, he was like, you know, if you want to do something on tape for fun, just do it. And I was like, yeah, screw it, I'll do it. I know I won't get it, it's fine. And sometimes when there isn't that pressure and there isn't that anticipation and build up, it really frees you up, you know. And I got that. So coming from a place of thinking you're gonna, you know, completely crash and burn can sometimes be a good thing, I think.
It's funny because I was always curious. I don't know if you can tell that he's British, or just very affected. But I always wondered how you got that role in Nightcrawler. How they, you know, found this Englishman and said, "Oh, he's perfect for."
Yeah, I think that was
LA
part of it. To
local.
be honest, they were like, "It's a very LA role,
Yeah.
and like you're like a British thespian who went to drama school to study Shakespeare." And
You all go to drama school and study Shakespeare. That's why you get all the jobs.
that's what we do.
And they do great American accents.
Thanks, guys. That's great. Well, yeah, I mean, it's funny that I think sometimes it can stand in the way, but I think it can also really sometimes really, you know, exoticize British actors. As I'm sure you're well aware, it's like, oh wow, they're all so well trained, and they're all. It's, I mean, ultimately, I think there's a whole different kind of approach to the work that is prominent here, that is really slept on in the UK, which is, you know, your kind of more what people might call a method kind of approach, or even like Meisner and stuff like that. We just have a very much a kind of text-based approach to our training, and it's really interesting for me watching, you know, wonderfully trained actors here in the US, hearing about the range and the diversity of the training they've had. So I think it's probably a bit of a myth that we're much better trained, but don't publish that.
The secret's out. Asia?
There we go. Geez, yeah. There. I'm like, what was the question?
Big break.
Big break. I mean, gosh. For me, I guess, I mean, yeah, there is the notion of like the big break on the outside where other people know you. But I guess for me personally, my big break was getting into Yale School of Drama. You know, getting into that program and being surrounded by those artists. Like, I know they weren't the whole world or anything, but they were my whole world, and getting to explore my artistry with them and figure out all that I had to offer this craft, and just watching people that I thought were so amazing, that just really set me on the path to be able to accomplish everything that I have so far. And I think back to that experience a lot because it was the only time in my life where I just got to live, eat, and breathe acting, and I sometimes kind of really want to go back to it just because we just got to explore so much, like things that you just never get to, you know, all the plays and the Chekhov and the Shakespeare, and it's like you're fed in this really wonderful way, and there are wonderful projects that I've gotten to be a part of outside of school, but I always felt like the biggest thing that I had to overcome was my own self-doubt. And so being at Yale allowed me to kind of walk in that kind of knowing, like, oh, I can do this, which has just really prepared me for everything else that came my way. So even though I don't think that really answers your question.
No, absolutely. And to the outside world, I think you know, there was a huge leap in public consciousness when you started doing How to Get Away with Murder,
Like
which
public consciousness, like they awoke to me.
But that is that is also a show that people are extremely fanatical about. Have you had any strange encounters with, you know?
I mean, I have had some odd fan encounters, but then the couple times that I talked about it, that fan found out, and so I stopped talking about any weird fan encounters because then I would see stuff on Twitter being like, "That was me. She's talking about me." I was like, okay then. They're really paying attention.
Well, I mean, people are so invested in the show, and they probably
very
have.
invested. Yes, they are.
They probably have theories and want to pitch you ideas.
Oh my God, yes.
I hope it's okay to mention this, but I was looking at your Twitter feed the other day, and you actually had kind of it's a horrible but also a funny story about, I guess they searched you before you got on the plane.
Yeah, well, I wrote an article about it recently, actually, in The Guardian, called Airports and Auditions. And it was just about how kind of the airport interrogation room, which I'm regularly taken to for secondary protocol, they call it, and the audition waiting room are really quite similar spaces. You know, they're spaces where you're kind of surrounded by kind of lookalikes of yourself. And you're all kind of trying to like convince the person who's making the decisions that you're not like everyone else, and you're kind of reduced to a set of labels. You kind of dehumanized in that way, and you kind of have to audition in a way. You know, you have to kind of convince someone it's cool, we're cool. So I mean, I'd encourage people to read the article if they're interested in that. It speaks to kind of issues of race and representation and casting and that kind of stuff, because I can't go into it fully here, but the funniest thing happened is after the article came out, and it was met with a really wonderful response, which I didn't expect. I was flying over here, and same thing happened. Before I get on the plane, they put me to one side to take everything off and have the secondary search before you're getting on the plane. But this time, when I get on the plane and sit down, I'm on the cover of the in-flight magazine. And then I'm like, and then I turn on the in-flight entertainment, and it's like, Virgin recommends the night of. And so I'm like, so it's kind of funny. It's like, but I think that speaks to kind of, insider-outsider status that maybe many creative people feel, and many of us feel. And it just so happens that just by dint of the body I'm born into and the time and place I'm born into, I find myself at a particularly acute fault line of that insider-outsider status, with what's happening with my career, but the fact that you can't escape who you are, what your name is. And I think in a way that's a curse, but also a blessing, because I hope it means that, you know, the work that I do may have a resonance outside of just it being entertaining, but just having a wider, you know, kind of cultural impact, just in terms of visibility and stuff.
The tweet I saw, which it's so hard on Twitter to be so witty in 140 characters, and you're a really good tweeter. I mean, you're a great actor, but you're a really good tweeter. I think it said
Acting
something.
was a launch pad for the Twitter career. That's what I'm trying to aim for.
It was something along the lines of, you know, that moment you get strip searched, but you're actually already on the plane.
Yeah, so that awkward moment when they search you before letting you on the plane, but it turns out you're kind of already on the plane.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it had a picture of the magazine and the night of on TV.
Yeah, but I mean, that kind of stuff happens a lot, but sometimes it's kind of weirdly funny. I remember once I got called for a secondary search before boarding a connecting flight in Minneapolis, and there were two other guys there that were already, they said, Mr. Ahmed, come for secondary search. And I turned up, and there was a Somali dude and an Indian dude with a beard, and it turned out we were all Mr. Ahmed. So we were like, they didn't really know who they were meant to search.
Right.
And we all assumed, no, it's me, because it's always me. It's like, I got this, it's me. So they just searched all of us.
Wow.
And it was kind of, we were cracking jokes, and I did a little selfie of it, and I was like, oh, you know, secondary searchers have never been so sociable. We're going to start a boy band called the Ahmed 3. And that post went viral.
Yeah.
And people started, it's like a Tumblr meme. And so people said, like, oh, they've created fan art for like this boy band called the Ahmed 3, saying that our debut album is called Randomly Searching for You. And all this kind of stuff. And so, the irony is that now with my band, the Sweatshop Boys, our first music video is about being randomly searched.
Really?
So art fulfilling, life fulfilling Twitter.
Wow. You know, you mentioned comparing that to the audition room, and I've never met an actor who enjoyed auditioning. It's such a strange process and almost seems counterintuitive to casting someone, and yet there really doesn't seem to be a better way. Can you kind of talk about your experiences with auditions? I don't know if you've had any of those like nightmare ones where like someone answered the phone in the middle of your audition or
I
something.
want to hear about her magic audition skills.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I want to copy
Apparently,
her.
you're very good at
Tell
it.
us what to do. And how does it? What's
Well,
the deal
Just
here?
your way.
I guess I went in with no expectations. They gave me cold read sides, and I took off with it. I don't know. I guess because I had no idea what I was doing, it sounded more natural, perhaps. He said the one thing that Wes Anderson, I remember, said about it was it sounded like you were making up the lines. And so that is something I've always carried with myself. Every time I try to do auditions, I say, I want it to sound like I am making up these lines. So, yeah, and I guess that's worked out fairly well for me so far. I'm getting to be here now, so.
Anyone else?
Well, I remember being in school, and so you spend 3 years in a program, but then you walk out, you don't know how to audition. And it's a very different muscle and a really different skill set. And I remember someone saying that it takes you 3 years to learn how to audition. It doesn't mean it'll take you 3 years to get a job, but just kind of putting out a number, just saying that it takes you like 3 years to kind of figure out what you're doing in a room. And which means in some way you have to be able to create the space. And so I began to put together little things and having my little toolbox of stuff that I began to learn to rely on in order to make that experience as real as possible for myself and for the casting folks. But yeah, I've had a few terrible ones. I just think over time, at least now I kind of know how the audition is gonna go, even if I don't really have it that day. I just think technique-wise, I've just been doing it long enough where I have enough things where I can lean on. I had a really horrible audition for Game of Thrones a few years back. So I did this whole thing where I had this chair, and I was playing this guy who was supposed to be relatively powerful. There was a black guy in Game of Thrones. Remember the guy who gets locked into the vault? Even in a fantasy land, there are people of color.
Yes.
Yeah, so that guy, I went in. Yeah, there's one. I went in. So he's gonna get put into this vault and sealed and everything. But so I had this whole thing set up where I'd been working with this chair, and I was kind of like playing with these power positions and whatnot. So I had it all worked out. So I was good, and kind of had that tied into just the over, the arc of the scene. And I'm going for Alexa Fogel, who was putting me on tape. And so anyone who's been into the HBO offices in Los Angeles, like you're on the inside of an iPod or something, it's a little bit futuristic. Walk in there, and I was a little bit nervous, just because I knew what was at stake and really excited about potentially maybe being on that show. Walk into the casting office, and Alexa's there, and I come in, and there's 2 stools. There's no chairs in sight. There's no back to the stool. And so she's sitting on the stool, and the camera's propped up perfectly behind her head, so the eyeline would be nice and tight to camera. And then I go and I sit on that stool, again, no chairs around. And I get on there, and you're just right in that little awkward space where your feet are almost on the ground, but not. And so I lost all my work. It just went out the window, and I felt like I was a robot and stiff and uncomfortable. And she goes, well, look, you got to loosen that guy up a little bit. And at the end, I was just thinking, like, I need a damn chair. So, but that was
I'm
pretty
trying to imagine how tall a stool is if your feet are touching the ground.
It was just, it was high. It was high. It was just in that little awkward space where putting your feet on the ground wasn't right, but then you couldn't quite put them up anywhere. So,
Wow.
But anyway, I've had plenty of terrible ones.
I had an audition once where, the whole headshot thing. Like, I used to always bring them, but, when it's been years and you've been working and you sometimes you run out of paper and you forget to bring one. And I went into this one casting director, and she did not like that. I didn't have one, and I felt like she was pretending like I wasn't supposed to be there. And I was like, well, I'm here, so what do you want to do? And she was like, well, spell out your name. Now, I have a very long name because I use my first, middle, and last name, Asia Naomi King. So it was like A as in apple, J as in Jack, A as in apple, space, N like Nancy, A, and it continues. And she's just sitting there writing down my whole, it's like, I know my name is on that paper somewhere. I know it is. And then she was like, okay, go ahead. And I was like, all right. And I'm like with the reader, and I noticed she's back there and the camera's right beside her. She did not reach to turn it on.
Oh.
And I'm like, okay, sorry. We're going to do this now. And I read the scene, and like, no little red light. And I'm like, well, this was great. Thank you. And you have a nice life. I will never see you again.
Auditions can be so such difficult things to go into, because they feel so artificial.
Yes.
The least you can do is make someone feel comfortable. Sometimes you can get made to feel too comfortable, though. I remember my audition for Slumdog Millionaire was atrocious. It was a car crash. Like Danny Boyle, if any of you ever met him, he's like the nicest guy in the world. He's like, yeah, you're right, mate. How you doing? Have a seat. Gets you spends all the time in the world, makes you completely loose. And then he wanted me to like have an argument with him, and I just remember got a little bit excited and like slammed him up against the wall and ripped his shirt open. And like his buttons like popped open on his shirt, and I was like, he was like,
And you
all
think
right,
we're
Riz, thanks for
method?
coming in. Thanks for coming in, Riz. Nice one, Riz. All right, that way, Riz. Thanks a lot.
So you didn't get the part.
No, that one. I should get him a new shirt. I think that's what. I should do that. That's why he hasn't called again.
I was wondering, have you ever run into him since then?
I have actually a couple of times.
Really?
Yeah. He's been friendly. He hasn't got too close to me though. He's kept a bit of distance. Yeah.
He holds onto his shirt. So I'm curious for each of you, because you all have great movies this fall, but what has been your most challenging role to date?
Yeah, definitely the film that I just did that's open now, The Birth of a Nation, has by far been my most challenging role to date. I've never played an enslaved person. I've never spent time on a plantation in the South. So just doing that alone, being in that environment was a lot. There's like, as we shot that last year in the summer, and like Savannah, Georgia, it is hot, it is humid. There are horse flies. I didn't know what a horse fly was, but they bite, apparently. Yeah, and there is not enough DEET in the world to get them away from you. And so just being in that environment where, you know, bugs are attacking you and it's so hot and you're wearing this thick material and you're doing these lines and you're in this environment and you're really, I mean, like, there's something in the land and you know what's happened on this soil and it fills you, you know, so doing that, just being there and experiencing that emotionally was a lot, and I didn't really know how I was going to enter into it and honor this woman's experience without kind of crumbling myself, but she carried me through, so that was great, and yeah, it was extremely challenging, but I'm really proud of myself.
Was it hard? I mean, I don't know if you're the kind of actor that takes your work home with you, but, you know, did you find yourself having to decompress at night and sort of turn that off?
Definitely. It's very hard to step away from. Our set was way too realistic. Like, I mean, it didn't feel like a set. It just felt like I was in 1831. Like, my first day of shooting was on an auction block, me standing on an auction block. So going home after that, the feeling of it all kind of, it's just the reality of it kind of, I don't want to say destroys, but it hurts.
Sure.
You know, it hurts a part of you. So when you get home, trying to like shake that off or do something else, but you know you can't shake it off too much because you have to go back to work the next day, and so there was a lot of bourbon involved, which helped a lot, and I had a great community with my castmates who are now my friends, and we were able to show each other so much love throughout the process that we were able to, like, you know, still passionately take on what we were so charged to do, but also say, okay, I got you, I can hold you in this moment so that you don't have to face it alone.
That's great.
For me, it would definitely be this project that I shot this summer called Roxanne, about this young girl, a rapper, a musician, this female battle rapper in the 80s, it's a biography piece, who was extraordinarily talented, and but she was like 14, 15 years old, and she was really just taking off, and she got sidetracked because she met a man who was twice her age. I think when they got together there, she was about 16 and he was like 32. And they got romantically involved and they had a child, and he got on drugs and became abusive and made life extraordinarily difficult for her. And so I played that guy, and my goodness, I had nightmares. The last week of shooting, I couldn't sleep. I would come to set tired. I couldn't quite shake him. I had never been so affected by a character because there is no redeeming qualities in this person, and so anything positive in him was really front loaded. And I think if anything, I tried to in some way build in there or sort of articulate what he was suffering with, that in some way caused him to act out and feel like that was the place for him to, or she was the person who was going to be on the receiving end of that, and kind of why, but none of it being justifiable, obviously, but just having to, pretending to choke someone and take that home at night is really difficult, you know? So that was by far the most difficult part I've had to sort of navigate, and, you know, because you still have a responsibility to play it truthfully and be committed, you know. But that was really difficult.
It's interesting too because I don't mean to make it so simplistic as to say he's a villain.
Yeah.
But you've played some very charming villains. I mean, obviously Cottonmouth is incredibly charming, and your character in Moonlight is so fascinating because he is a drug dealer, but he is one of the most likable and sympathetic people in the movie.
Well, yeah, but I wouldn't think of Juan as a villain, and I think it also goes into where you come from. You know, some of the communities, at least where I grew up, you know, if you look at the dropout rate in Oakland, if you look into some of the things that have gone on in the homes and what people have access to, I think people tend to find themselves in any class or culture working in fields that they kind of get led a certain way, and they end up being exposed to a certain range of opportunities. And it's very hard. I was fortunate enough to make it out of Hayward. Hayward is by no means the ghetto, but it's a difficult place to leave. It's a difficult place to get out of. You're very fortunate to, or you're grateful for your working class job. You can take care of your family and your apartment and pay for your car, and it can be a fairly, for lack of a better word, simple existence, you know. But I think if you look at what's going on in Liberty City, Miami, if you see what happens in these communities, that dealing drugs is an opportunity to take care of yourself and to take care of your family. So it doesn't mean that you're a villain, though.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you're ill-intended as you are selling drugs. It's a means to an end. And so what I appreciate about Moonlight is that we finally get to see people who are full human beings. You know, I had friends who were drug dealers, you know, who just got snatched up and disappeared or in prison. There's a guy, when I was growing up, there's a gentleman, we'll call him Thad. And Thad was the cleanest, sharpest, probably one of the kindest gentlemen that I knew. And he dated my aunt for a while. And then when my mother got remarried, I think I was 9 years old, he happened to be a really good friend of my stepfather's. And so Thaddeus was still in my life. Thad was still in my life in another way. And so Thad had this 1973 canary yellow Corvette Stingray. He washed it every day. But he lived in this duplex house up kind of in the Hayward Hills. He rented the bottom unit. It was like a 1-bedroom unit. He DJ'd. He was a substitute teacher. Nice guy. Worked with kids. And then at some point I was in college and my stepdad told me that he was in prison. I was like, for what? He had been selling drugs. I had no idea. He had to go to like North Carolina or something like that for like 10 years or something. He was in prison for a while. But if you all see Moonlight, that there is a resemblance in those characters where I never saw him beat up anybody or have a gun or any of that. But in terms of the people who I knew and grew up with who were sort of navigating that criminal element, weren't these people that I'm used to seeing on television. And what's dangerous is that when you go to London and different parts of Europe or different parts around this world, or even within America, people who are never going to, there's people who live in Miami who have never been to Liberty City. That's how people get informed about an entire culture. And usually those people writing those stories and shooting those films and producing that content are not people from those places. So you have someone else framing for people, for the world, how to think of your community. And they become truths because there's nothing else to combat version of that two-dimensional, one-dimensional version of a drug dealer. So people can't help but go drug dealer villain, opposed to drug dealer, but complicate that and go, wow, he's a wonderful father, though. Just like there could be a guy stealing, to me, is worse. You have these white-collar criminals stealing millions of dollars and people losing their pensions and suffering and can't pay for health care and dying many years earlier than what they should because they can't afford to take care of themselves. But those people will be framed as three-dimensional.
Right.
Right? And so it's the same respect has to be shown to these characters who have something in their lives that should not be celebrated, but they're still full people, right? And so we don't have that. So I took this opportunity. I'm very appreciative of having had this opportunity because finally I saw something that reflected a truth from where I came from. You know, I have people who have died of I know people who have suffered from drug addiction, who are in prison right now. I have friends who will never get out of jail, but they were good people to me, you know, so.
And hopefully we'll be seeing more of that because when everyone sees Moonlight, I'm sorry, I'll stop talking about Moonlight.
You're gonna remind me of the question.
Oh, your
I was
most
really
challenging
enjoying
role.
what
I
you said there, by the
know.
way. That's beautifully said, and yeah.
It was about your most challenging role.
most
and
challenging
it's
role,
interesting
yes.
because you just did a big special effects movie, and that's got to have challenges of its own.
Yeah, in a way, I think actually it was the night of, and that's because the challenges started before we even really got down to filming it. It's quite weird. You know, we shot the pilot in 2012, so
That's
watching that
right.
first episode is like watching a different person. And after we shot the pilot, it actually didn't get picked up. So that was like one kind of heartbreak, and then it did get picked up, and then James Gandolfini passed away. So then the project was in hiatus, heartbroken again, and then it was up and running again, and Robert De Niro was going to do it, and they got the scripts ready, and then he stepped away, and that was the third time it was not happening. And then about another 6 to 8 months passed, and on the last day of our options running out, they called up and said, we're going to do it. And we're doing it with the person that Steve Zalian had always actually kind of written the role for.
Really? Which is John Turturro?
Exactly, yeah. And so just going into it, you're already going in with all this baggage and all this kind of like sadness and heartbreak and anticipation. And so in a weird way, there's a lot of kind of tension just going into it. And then lots of stories started coming out, kind of similar to what Mahershala was speaking to. You know, the story of Khalif Browder and Adnan Syed came out as we were shooting. It really kind of placed quite a heavy burden on us, and I certainly felt that sense of responsibility. And interviewing people, going to Rikers, interviewing people that had been in the criminal justice system, that was wild, you know? And I just felt a massive sense of responsibility added to that anticipation, and then the shoot was just crazy. It
Well,
was
and the
like-
physical transformation.
Yeah, so then I had to kind of, you know, doing the very long shooting days, and then gym would be like from 10:30 at night to like midnight kind of thing. Then you get up at 5. So that was, it worked, and there was a physical transformation, but it definitely took its toll. And so physically and emotionally, it was, you know, it was crazy. But it's weird because we'd been through so much making it. By the time we finished it, we were like, this is that thing that no one's ever going to see. You know, I mean, it took us 2 years to even get to start making it. We all nearly died making it. And if it had come out in 2013, I thought there wasn't so much amazing TV around, you know. But then 2016, we're like, these guys have ruined everything. You know. So I was literally like, it's going to get lost amidst the glut of gourmet television. Took too long to make. And so the fact that it's been received how it is beyond, it's almost comical to us on the inside. It was that thing that was the running joke that was never going to happen.
Did you shoot the pilot before Nightcrawler?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah, I shot the pilot in 2012 and shot Nightcrawler in 2013.
And they actually aired the pilot? They didn't
They
change
didn't air
anything
it.
other
No,
than...
no, they think the HBO view them internally.
Oh, okay, so you
and
reshot
said-
the pilot for
No,
the
we didn't
series?
reshoot it.
That's
That's the
is from
2012
4
pilot.
years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Sorry, Kara?
Oh, well, geez, I don't have any really good stories. The way you guys have these very intense and heartbreaking and heartfelt tales about this. But I suppose I got into this business when I was 12 years old, and I am about to turn 18 next month. So my challenge has been, I suppose, throughout my the beginnings of my career, playing, because I've always played the teenage girl, because that's what I've been in this. And there's always been a challenge in every role about creating a character and a persona that people can connect to, that adults can look back and they can say, well, you know, as a teenager, that was a struggle that I can relate to. And it's been always about creating this character as a teenage girl that others can view and say, well, that is very a relatable aspect, and that they can really see parts of themselves in. I've found that that's been really my challenge. And also, I've gotten to work with, we've talked about I've mentioned a few directors that I've gotten to work with, and there's always been this real thing about having big shoes to fill. There's always, because, you know, working with Kenneth Lonergan and Jim Jarmusch, and I've worked with Wes Anderson, and I just never want to disappoint, and there's always that high standard when you're working with such big names, that I guess that's also been another really big challenge throughout.
And you're about to work with Wes again, right?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
I am.
But it's an animated film, is that right?
It is an animated film, so got a little voiceover cameo role going on.
And I just want to close out by asking where we can see you all next. I've mentioned some of your projects, but are you working on something right now? Or I was hoping Riz could tell us all the whole plot of Rogue One.
I'll be tweeting it later.
Do you get to hold a lightsaber? You probably can't say.
I'll be tweeting about it later.
We can start with Kara.
Oh, well, I've got Patterson and Manchester by the Sea here at the festival, and I guess more details about the next Wes Anderson film will be coming along hopefully shortly.
So the next thing that I'm doing is this album, the Sweatshop Boys album, Kashmir, is out next week. We'll be touring that, and then Star Wars Rogue One will be out over Christmas.
Are you going to be an action figure?
I am an action figure now.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you have it?
Or as I like to call it, the voodoo doll. So I'm keeping an eye on who's buying it. Start getting cramps, I'll know what's going on.
Do you have an action figure from Luke Cage yet?
I got a bobblehead, which seems to be appropriate. Moonlight, and Roxanne is in edit right now, so hopefully it'd be at Sundance or something. But Hidden Figures, which is right now in January.
And that you're coming full circle in that you played Taraji P. Henson's love interest?
Yes, that was amazing. I told her, it was funny, Taraji was being Taraji. I was like, you need to just relax. You're about to get nominated. She's like, shut up, Mahershala. And then she got nominated for Benjamin Button. So
yeah.
But yeah, so it was great working with her. And she's so much bigger now and has had this amazing career. And it was just wonderful, like, coming back around with her, just checking in and kind of seeing where she's at. And but I think there's going to be a lot of phenomenal work in that. And it was great getting to be a part of it.
Yeah, I've heard great things.
Yeah, Birth of a Nation just opened this past Friday.
Yesterday?
And
Yesterday,
Is today
technically. I know, I
Saturday?
just...
Oh, okay.
yeah.
I don't know where I am. And you can catch me every Thursday night at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, tell us everything that's going to happen this season.
Somebody's dying.
Well, I want to thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you guys. It's been a great audience.